Alright, good afternoon. So right now, we're going to go over what we did today in our sewing lab, which is we are going to pin and top stitch our mask, okay? So, in my case, I have put a piece of wire in here. You don't have to, so ultimately I'm not going to cover that step, putting it in, because it doesn't matter, because everyone in the class is not actually doing that step. So, what you want to do is you want to find the edge of your fabric. You want to make sure that your finger can't go in there. And what you're going to do is put pins all the way, starting at the center. I always start at the center on these, and we're going to follow along the seam and pin outward. Alright, so here, I definitely prefer the wire in my masks, primarily because I have glasses and it helps keep the mask up against my face, which reduces the amount of fogging my glasses do, but it is not necessary. So I'm going along the edge here, and our lining fabric stops here. I'm going to go ahead and pin all the way to the end, because I'm going to stitch that little flap down. So that's that side. Now I'm going to do this side. And in my case, because I have a wire in there, I'm making sure that I put the wire right up against the seam. But again, if you're not doing a wire, you just want to make sure that the seam is fully right side out. You can pin the top and sew it, then pin the bottom and sew it. It's up to you. So again, I'm going to go all the way to the edge. So here there's no wire, so this is just what you're doing all the way across, okay? Alright, so that's the top pinned. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom while we're sitting here talking. Again, I want to find the center and pin that one. And then I'm going to make sure that my seam is fully right side out all the way along here as I pin this edge. This is a really good project to learn on, because it's small, relatively easy to handle, and it doesn't take a huge amount of time. It can be done entirely by hand or by machine if you have one. It is up to you. You can decorate them however you want. You can make them fancy, you can make them your own, or you can make them boring and just functional, whatever works. You can make them to match your outfits or your costumes or whatever you happen to be doing. And there. So now I have the top and bottom pinned on my mask. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start with the bottom. And I'm personally just lining the edge of my presser foot up with the edge of my fabric. I'm going to show you guys here maybe. Let's see, am I on there? Where am I at? I gotta find, let me see, trying to see this while I'm not on the other side of the screen. There we go. Alright, so bear in mind, you know what, I'm going to turn this camera around a second. Alright, because when it's in selfie mode, it makes everything backwards. So here you guys can see I've got the edge of my fabric lined up with the edge of my presser foot. See how skilled I am doing this one hand while holding it, watching it through the camera rather than... Alright, so I'm going to be sewing across here, and so this is what your top stitching is going to look like. Now it'll look a little different if you are sewing it by hand, obviously, because it'll show your hand sewing stitches rather than the machine stitches. Let me go ahead and finish this, because trying to go over this center seam with the machine while not being able to while holding the camera would be difficult. So I finish up going over that. I'm going to pull it off here, pull the pins out, and show you what that full seam looks like, and then we'll do the top. So here is what that bottom seam looks like, top stitched, okay? So and then the back, you'll see that this little flap is stitched down, and that's good because when we go to run the elastic in it, because that's stitched down, you'll end up with less threads trying to poke out. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the top. I am not going to attempt to do this right now with the camera on it because it's kind of a pain in the patootie. So again, I'm going to line the presser foot up right along the edge of the fabric. If you are putting wire in there, there is the slight possibility you may have to move a little bit further into your fabric when you get to the wire, but it depends on the width of your fabric. Or, I mean, sorry, the width of your wire. I'm going really slow over that part because I do have wire in it. I don't want to hit the wire with my needle because it could break the thread, break the needle, whatever. Now, I'm going to pull the pins out and show you that. All right, so this is, the top is sewn, okay? Now, if and only if you're using wire, you're going to go find the edge of your wire and you're going to do a little stitch this way across the seam, just so that your wire doesn't shift down the tube. And then that is, let me bend this in here, where we ended up at the end of today's lab. All right, so that is the next steps on your lab 3 mask making, and we'll see you guys on Friday.